Some people have a favorite build, but I win with strategies. I laid out in a 4-part guide the best strategy in Caves of Cud if you want to win consistently. It's so good that I'm now going to do a challenge, playing not as a mutant or a Truecan, but as a human. No cybernetics, no mutations, no help from followers, and we're going to throw our starting gear on the ground and never touch it again, only using things that we find throughout the game. So how do we set this up? We're playing classic mode, of course. We're going to pick Truecan so that we don't get any mutations. And we're picking artifacts because it doesn't come with any awesome starting gear like an Ishkar rifle. We're going to start with 16 in our stats across the board so that we have 0 modifiers. And then we're going to just skew our probabilities a little bit by boosting intelligence for tinkering, boosting agility for pistol and rifle, ranged weapons basically, and boosting our strength in case we want to carry heavy weapons. Those are kind of my favorite things to do in the game, so I want to be ready for it. We're obviously picking none on the cybernetics, and we're not going to ever put cybernetics in place the entire game. So there's our starting build. We're calling this the human scavenger. So we're only using things that we find throughout the game. We are going to be tinkering, but we are not going to be using any sort of vendor shenanigans, cloning, etc. So just the baseline stuff. We're going to be starting in Jopa to give ourselves a fair start here in an area that I'm really familiar with. And then the first thing that we're going to do is book it due south, look at what kind of good stuff we have in our inventory, and then say goodbye to all that loot. Just skip ahead a little bit here to save all the inventory management. Getting rid of 2 Sphinx salt injectors and 1 salve injector really hurts when you see that happening. We started off with a good amount of water as well. But of course, we're also dropping all of our armor and all of our weapons as well. No reason to give ourselves any special advantages with starting gear or anything else. Here's our starting skill set. Tinker 1 and 2 could be useful. Obviously, we'll use it at some point, but it's basically just saving us some skill points. I had to pick some kind of background, so I decided to pick one that I wouldn't be using right off the bat. You can use Tinker early. I don't. I wait until, Grit Gate, at least, generally speaking, to start doing any sort of tinkering. So we do go ahead and steal things from these starting houses. That's the first thing we're going to scavenge. Picking up a couple of weird artifacts here. Our first challenge then is identifying them with no monocle and no optical techno scanner, which I almost always have on my Truecan. Just trying to get all the cash we can early on. And of course, we're doing our standard water ritual, everybody in the starting village. And since we're in the salt marshes, we're going to use some of that rep to learn harvestry. Now, usually I would learn that from the Elder here, but he's disliked by the Putus Templar and by the Hindra of Bay Law. And those are both groups that I like to remain favorable with as long as possible, at least until we get the Force Bracelet and until we get to the Grit Gate quest. So we learn harvestry then from the Water Vine farmer. We do our standard auto explore to get our 2 secrets. And then we're debating using Archive to identify the artifacts. But I remember then that if you sit in a chair, which I do, you get a benefit to identifying these artifacts. And so we go ahead and examine and find an electro bow, which is actually a huge find. I'm not going to downplay this. Having 10 penetration early in the game is fantastic. Laser pistols are 9, and the carbine is 9, and so is the Ishkar rifle, or is it 8? Anyway, it's not 10. And so that electro bow is a great find. What we don't have is any way to power it. So we are on a journey at this point to find chem cells or anything else, and then use tinkering to recharge those batteries and use the electro bow probably for a little while here. So that's our only piece of gear, but we still can't use it. So we're off to the salt marshes, where we are going to look around mostly for fish to get 25 experience a pop. Of course, I realize, oh yeah, I don't have any torches. I've thrown them on the ground, and so we're going to have to find a way to buy some torches. For now, we'll just explore during the daylight. There's a croc, and of course, without ranged weapons, I do not fight crocs early on. They have a chance to remove limbs, remove your head, etc. And so we don't want to be in melee range with them. So we just book it the other direction. So basically, we circle back around to Joppa. And since our electro bow isn't powered, it doesn't provide us with any light. So what we're trying to do here is buy a torch, ultimately. Looking around at what else they might have, they do have an Ishkar rifle, and I'm thinking, boy, I wish I could afford that. Of course, I'm not carrying anything I want to sell. Even the electro bow is only worth 42 at this point. I don't have particularly high ego, after all. So I end up deciding on one torch and a hand axe because it's cheap and it gives me enough melee damage to at least kill some fish or whatever I might come across. I decide against the weird artifact, even though it might be a battery, because it basically uses it would take all of my water to buy it. So we've got our eye on this croc, and luckily the crocs and the glow pads are natural enemies. And the glow pads are quite tanky, so usually they can take the croc out. And in the meantime, we'll be taking out any fish that we see in the area. This is pretty much my standard way of leveling up. It's extremely safe. You just got to watch for crocs, and you don't want to be in melee range of a bunch of glow pads when you're attacking fish at the same time. So that's the only thing to watch out for, but it's pretty quick to level up at this stage in the game. And the goal here, as I laid out in my guide, is just to get the first few levels until we can get Wayfaring online. Our first skills that we would normally pick up are Scavenger and Disassemble, because I like to get those early bits from trash piles and start building up our inventory so that we can later tinker on them. The Disassemble keeps our inventory weight from building too high by collecting those bits and just breaks them down automatically into the letters and numbers bits that you actually use for tinkering. What it doesn't do is if you have Disassemble automatically disassembling those bits, you don't have any bits to sell to vendors. They're usually worth like 2.5 drams, sometimes 4.5 drams, depending on the bit. So it can be a good idea to use the first ones as vendor trash instead of disassembling them, especially in a run like this where I didn't actually have any starting gear. So we're trying to find any bit of money that we can. But I didn't do that. So then the only other skills that we have online at this point are Tinkering 1 and 2, just from being in artifacts. And like build turret, which we're never going to use. And like side note, I would love to use build turret. I wish it was better. The downtime on it, I think, is 10 turns while you build the turret. And yes, it can shoot while you're building it, but just being locked in place for 10 turns is way too long. So I'm really hoping that they eventually do something with that, do something to make it a little bit better or safer or whatever, more usable, right? I'd use it on a build. I'd do a build based on turrets in general, just a turret guy if it was more usable. But yeah, long story short, we're not using that. And we're not using tinkering one or two for quite a while, probably. The first thing we're going to use it on at this point, I'm thinking about recharging batteries to use that electro bow. So, got to find the battery first, of course. So here we run into a croc, but have a nice little group of glow pads nearby. And so we're just kind of zoning the croc with the glow pads. And then I'm trying to figure a way to pull him in because he will avoid the glow pads to try to get to me unless I do something a little bit tricky. And there we go. Force him into melee range. And now he is fighting glow pads. And I foolishly get into melee range with him and take a hit. But we got lucky. No dismemberment. I went with the artifacts then because, I felt like the skills are useful later on, but I would have had them by the time I start using them anyway, in some sense. Like you get so many skill points from being an intelligence based Truekin that starting off with some skills that you aren't going to be using was no advantage really. Certainly not in the early game when it matters. Um, right now here you can see me turning off the automatically disassemble scrap in the options. So I've had the idea that I'm going to keep some of those and sell them as vendor trash. You can see leveling up pretty quickly. 25 experience a pop per fish. They usually come in groups. So just using that basic hand axe that cost me 8 drams to do most of the work at this point. Obviously, this is sort of the most boring part of the game, so um, apologies for the slow commentary. You're welcome to jump ahead to the next phase when we start doing wayfaring, which we're going to pick up very soon here. Mine's compass first, and now we're just kind of waiting for Marsh's lore, which is at the next level, level 4. That's usually where I find myself getting the first wilderness lore skill. Because, like I said, I like the scavenger and disassemble first because while we're looking around, we often find piles of trash. And you might as well just get that free loot. I think there's probably a debate, could be a debate. If you're trying to optimize, you may be able to get Wayfaring online a turn earlier. I don't think you can get it online at 2 because you would need 150 points. And I think you get 130 on average from leveling up with this kind of starting Truekin build. So I think you still got to wait till level 3. So I'm basically delaying it, I think, by just one level by getting the scavenging online first. You can compare this, I guess, to some people doing the waterlogged tunnels, for instance, to level up in the early game. Obviously, this is a lot easier. It's slower. It's not risky in the slightest, right? So, in terms of, I don't know, fun or excitement, this ain't it. You're going to find that in the waterlogged tunnels more so, but you're also going to lose characters periodically. And I'm not exactly in the business of losing characters. I pretty much try to win with every one. Get lots of crocs as we run around the maps here. A lot more than I feel like I usually get. And of course, usually I'd have a ranged weapon on hand. but not this game. Not yet. Pretty easy to juke, though, if you know how their AI works around those glow pads. And then we stumble into a pack of snapjaws here. And this is a bit sketchy. Still only have that hand axe and a torch, no shield. But we're finding some loot that's worth some money. And so, beyond the good experience, it's often good to fight snapjaws early in the game. You find some odd trinkets here and there, some injectors, things like that. They just carry random loot like that, which can be quite good to identify early. They also sometimes carry like jeweled bracelets and other things of value, painted weapons with secrets on them. But then you see a warlord come around the corner, and we are not in a good position to fight something like that, especially if it's still in a group, which I don't know because the map is um, unexplored. So I very nearly rip right there. Go down to 1 HP. Why? I don't know. That was foolish. But the funny thing about this game is that the sprint button is free and is instant speed, and there's no attacks of opportunity like there are in some of my other favorite games. And so you can just kind of walk away from threats as long as they don't have range. Makes things kind of easy, actually. But I'd be lying if I said we didn't get lucky there by surviving at 1 HP. So I'll take it. Luckily, we didn't stay and fight. Even if we hadn't gone down to 1 HP, there's a whole pack here, another warlord and multiple other dudes. So that would have been a really bad position to fight in. Our sprint's already back up, so we just sprint away from that pack. We're getting really close to level 4, so we're really just trying to get that last little bit of experience. And apparently the snapjaws got lost by me just sprinting ahead to the next map tile. And there's enough fish on this map to level up, so that's what we're doing. There we go. I see some loot on the ground over here. We're going to go check that out in just a second. But we get our wilderness lore for the marshes, and now we're going to be transitioning into the next phase of the game plan here in just a minute. Yeah, so I say, what's this gear over here? Not knowing where I was, of course. That's the loot that I threw on the ground. And so we put it back. I accidentally pick it up. We're going to put it back on the ground. Mistakes were made. Moving on. And back into Jopa, just by chance. So now we're going to pick up weird artifacts that cost around 50 to 60 drams. Oftentimes, those are going to be chem cells. I think that they can be solar cells as well. Fidget batteries, maybe. But in that price range, you have a pretty good chance of getting those batteries. Now, we could have used the crayons. A lot of people would use those crayons here. Sometimes you can get nano crayons. Um, but I don't do that in challenge runs because I don't really see the point of getting the Kessel face or something at this stage in the game. So we just sell that stuff. But at this point, we're doing the wayfaring portion of the strategy where we basically just travel around the map and find interesting places, find ruins and books, in this case, a lair. It's a scriptorium, so that's worth 1,500 experience. So we've gone up 2 levels just from the point of turning Wayfaring on to using it. We're at level 6 now. These guys can be interesting because they usually just sell books, but once in a while, they will sell you books that allow you to get reputation with the various groups around the world. So it's worth checking in here periodically. Those are called the Annals of Cud, I believe, and they can be for specific factions or any faction you like. So worth keeping an eye on. The scribes, the legendary scribes. So look at that pickup. Floating sphere is fantastic. So now I no longer need to have torches. The single torch I bought at the beginning of the game has lasted me right up to this point, till the floating sphere. We also found a fullerite axe, which is just amazing this early. It's a big upgrade from the basic hand axe. And a laser pistol with a chem cell in it, which I didn't notice at first, but there it is, the thing we've been looking for. So we flip that over into the electro bow. Now we actually have 3 sources of light on us. Not that that's necessary, but there you go. And if worst comes to worst, I've got a couple shots in that electro bow. So we go ahead and kill that croc that was waiting for us above the stairs. He can't use his ability to rip our arms off if we're on different floors. So it's a great way to kill him. Back we go to the overworld map. And we're just generally trying to sell stuff, make a little bit of money here and there, identify artifacts. Finding those early books is good. They're valuable if you need to trade them for something, if you really need some kind of loot. But if we can, we're going to hang on to them, obviously, to level up with. Mostly I'm just getting rid of weight from my inventory here. So we decide to pick up a leather armor, get some lead slugs in case we decide to use a gun at some point, and pick up a wooden buckler as well. I always like to have some kind of shield. Shields are extremely good in this game. 1 is great, 2 is better, right? So at some point we'll have an even better shield, but at least we got a little bit of AV and the shield online. We're also wielding 2 weapons at this point because we don't need that torch. So it was just whatever we had on hand. We don't have enough tinkering bits yet to recharge that chem cell, so we're really running on low still. But we're back to the overworld, and we're searching systematically each salt marsh tile to find the broken mechanical wings. One by one, we go to the center parsang until we find what we're looking for, which are flattened remains. But in this case, we find a village, which is nice for a little bit of experience, and at least 2 guaranteed secrets if you auto-explore. And if you're keen, you can get some quests from these villages or some rep at the very least. I don't usually do the quests in these villages. I just find that they're a little more tedious and slow than Wayfaring is. I would rather be exploring ruins, getting books, layers, etc. But I'm always looking for reputation if I can get it. So I'm always checking these guys. Um, Salve injector is a nice find here since we threw all of ours on the ground. I decided to trade the laser pistol for it, which is well worth when you're playing this like a traditional roguelike and every death counts. Go ahead and give that gun away because we aren't going to use it. And a single salve injector could absolutely save our run. So that's the thinking there. Well worth it. I go ahead and grab the quest. No intention of doing it. But you never know when you might end up at the place and just decide to do it. That guy was hated by insects. I'm never making friends with somebody that's hated by insects. That's one of the top groups that I want reputation with, along with robots. So, no thanks. Go ahead and water ritual them. And then I'm like, what is pointed circle? But it is a short sword where, what's it called? Dagger ability, I guess. So I had to look that up. Yeah, I didn't know. Never used it. I don't do those kind of builds in general. I know they're fun. People like them, but we're going to pass up on that. So back to exploring. Usually this is relatively quick. Would be even quicker if we had a ranged weapon, but we got one shot off on that croc. Anyway, we have enough bits now, so we go ahead and recharge it. And a fresh Kim cell on one of these electro bows will last quite a long time, really. So we're now happy to engage crocs for 37 experience at level 6. They're 75 at level 1 and 2, I think. So here's our first set of ruins. Still worth grabbing those fish for 12 experience, probably. Getting some secrets. Clearly not using the mod that ignores cave spiders. That's a pretty good mod. I've used it in the past, but we're not using any mods for these runs. I want people to see how I play vanilla, basically. Hostile and tough. But 10 penetration on the electro bow is pretty good. Unclear to me why these guys aren't attacking. Usually these are enemies, these mirthworms or whatever. So here's a scribe just laying here on the bed. So I'm like, hey, wake up and sell me your advertisement for this workshop, thank you. There's your Schrodinger page of the Annals of Quad for pariahs, which probably isn't worth buying, even if you had the money for it. But I'm always buying advertisements when I see them. At the very least, those are worth experience. When you actually go to the lair of the gunsmith, he's going to give you experience. And especially at these early levels, I'm still a level 6, and so that's going to be worth quite a lot if I can find it quickly and easily. It's over by the Yurd Freehold, unfortunately, so that's going to have to wait. Here's a lair for a glowfish. of course, those eels are automatically hostile. And while the fish are not automatically hostile, if you kill one of their eel friends, all the fish get angry. But usually these glow pad layers are safe, and I'm thinking that as I come around the corner to this plated nullworm, which is very dangerous at this point in the game. They have a tendency to crack your armor, and they can sprint, so they're quite fast, quite heavily armored, and so we just bail. Come down into a slimy salt marsh, which can sometimes be interesting. The tier 3 slime bogs can have interesting liquids in them, like the cloning draft and things like that. So at this stage in the game, you don't particularly want to find a low tier slimy area. It doesn't really do anything for you. Hello, rifle turret. That's the main thing to watch out for with these early ruins is rifle turrets. So I'm thinking, maybe I can get lucky here popping around the corner. So I tried a couple of times, but every time he takes me down to half health, it's like, well, fourth time's a charm? Nope. Really risky stuff here. So I decided to go a different way. Risky business, but I do have two weapons, one of them a full right axe. So was that optimal play? No, it was not. But I got the experience payoff for it. Just considering all of our options at this point. Really thinking about my evasion here, having just gone up against turrets. But I decided to get meal prep. Cooking and gathering is very strong early on, and it's very strong on a character like this where you're not relying on mutations or anything else really. And something like Carbide Chef, which we're going to pick up here, is all the better the earlier you get it. The reason we're picking up the wilderness lore for salt dunes and canyons is because we're going to work our way to the 6-day stilt very soon here. And I don't like to get lost anywhere. So I like to always have those wilderness lures for wherever I'm going next. But yeah, the Carbide Chef, the earlier you get it, the earlier you can start concocting your own inspired meals. Every level up, you get a guaranteed one. And once in a while, when you go to a new map, you get one. And that allows you to select from 3 possible effects every time you cook and pick the best one and then just recreate that effect whenever you want it. Very, very powerful ability. You can do some really fun and funky things with it. You can actually make whole builds around the various things that you can cook. I think I'll probably do that challenge at some point in the future. It's like some kind of mutant that specializes in cooking and triggered abilities or something could be very fun. So we got pretty lucky here. We found the flattened remains relatively early on. Got a null skull off of it, which may be guaranteed now. I've gotten that the last couple of times, so I'm thinking that's a guaranteed drop on this. And that was our goal here for the early game. So just spending a minute here looking at our different weapons, and we have that full right axe. Got a new carbide mace, and just seeing which one we want to have in our main weapon. We're both sitting at 6 penetration, so it's fine either way. I don't have skills in either one of those weapon types, so either one's good, really. Going to head back now to Joppa and talk to Argive. Finish up this quest with some of the junk we found. And then we're going to be looking at getting our strange tubes repaired and then identified. And we know what they are, of course. They're the broken mechanical wings, now fixed. We always have a good look at the data disks to see what kind of tinkering recipes we can find. And, the one here that stands out to me is the plasma grenade because we do want plasma for some of our builds later on. If we happen to get a flamethrower in particular, that plasma grenade could be very helpful for getting the coated in plasma debuff onto enemies and making the flamethrower more effective. So we're going to sit in this chair again to identify our artifacts. Main thing being the wings, which we'll equip. Also pick up a Hulk Honey Injector, which I am not fond of. Just double checking here. Is this any good for me? I don't like it, personally. There are some benefits to it. I think one of the best ways to use it is actually to cook with it. So that's something to consider. If you can hear my fire popping in the background, I apologize for that. I just threw another log in and it's going to town in there. There's our Ishikar rifle. It's worth considering at this point, given that we only have one battery and bullets are easier to find. But we decide to just switch into some copper nuggets to get rid of the heavier weight items that we're carrying. So next up, we're going to be heading up towards the 6-day stilt. Um, Having an inventory full of bits there reminded me I needed to turn back on my automatic disassembly of scrap. So we'll do that. And of course, we're always going to fly on the overworld, which speeds us up and I believe makes us less likely to get lost. It's already almost impossible for us to get lost. But speeding up on the overworld is also helpful for mitigating your water consumption and some other things throughout the game you may find useful to be fast for. But as we're going, we're just looking for more ruins, doing the whole Wayfaring game plan as usual. Not a lot to see here. There's some books. Yeah, a couple books. Worth taking to the stilt with us. On we go. Always checking out the layers. Layers are worth experience just for popping into them. But when you see a pack of enemies with rifles pointing at you, you get one turn to escape back to the overworld. So we'll do that. No heat resistance. Seeing this dawn glider from across the screen hits us for about a third of our damage and lights us on fire, so we're just going to bail on that one. That's really solid. That's the third ruin on our way up to the stilt, plus a layer. And there's number 4. So the Wayfaring just really paying off. Quite a few more books. All of that's good experience at the stilt. Here we get a couple of cybernetics. We don't know what they are yet, but they're definitely worth something. Get our quest turn in just for stopping by the stilt. And then just a reminder that you always want to be auto exploring every zone in the stilt to pick all the food off those green vines. You can cook it and it's worth a decent amount of money. Go ahead and turn in our Respeth secret for some XP. And considering here doing a water ritual just to get the skill he offers, physic, but he's hated by the bears and he's hated by some other stuff that we don't want to make enemies with. So we're going to end it there for video number 1 of this human scavenger run. Hope you'll tune in for the second part of this video where we'll be doing the Baylock quest to get our Force Shield bracelet online, and then we'll be doing the tunnels as well to get the pick online. So just running through the basic guide that I laid out in the last series of videos about mastering the Truekin, and we'll be wayfaring all the way along to help us level up, get money, and so on and so forth. So I hope this has been interesting to you. So far, nothing really deviating from the norm, but going forward, we're going to continue with no cybernetics, no mutations, no followers, and no cheesy stuff to make us more powerful than we should be. See you in the next one.